My name is Jana, and I'm going to tell you a bit about salary calculation in Germany today. It's a very complex topic, which we get a lot of questions about in our daily work from international talents we recruit for companies here, and also from persons we do counseling with. The tax system is quite complex, but we will try to cover some of the basics today. So what I'm going to talk about is how is salary calculated over here? What kind of deductions are you going to face before the money is credited to your bank account? We have come up with an exemplary calculation for you, just to give you an overview, because there are a lot of factors influencing the deductions you are facing. So we try to keep it as simple as possible. We can also do a deep dive into topics in later sessions if you have particular questions. Just leave them in the comments below so that we can answer your questions as well. I'm also going to just answer the question, what kind of taxes or social security expenses am I actually facing, what's being deducted? Because we have a very particular social security system over here in Germany, which is mandatory for everyone. If you're an employee, it's different if you're self-employed. So you will have to pay social security, no matter where you come from. And the percentages are fixed. There are some variations, but that's definitely going to be deducted from your salary. So just let's take a look at the example. We have calculated with 4,000 euros. Let's say you're a person, I don't know, from somewhere outside the EU. Your age is 29. That's a case we get very often, 29 or maybe 27 or whatever, 31, it doesn't matter. Living in Berlin. Let's say you're single and you don't have kids. Single meaning, you can have a boyfriend or girlfriend. That's something the tax office doesn't care about, but single meaning not married. If you're married, this will influence the tax class you're in, and that's the tax class determines the kind of income tax you're facing. So when you're married, you can do tax splits depending on the income of your partner and so on. So it's very complex. But the case we often get are persons who are not married yet, so young professionals. So that's the example we have taken today. Not a church member is also part of the profile we are calculating with today. Why are we mentioning this? Because in Germany, the church is allowed to deduct taxes. So if you're a member of the Protestant church or the Catholic church or even a Jewish denomination, they can deduct taxes from you. And the tax authority over here is collecting them and then passing them on to the churches. So that's why this is important. That's something you have to know if you're using online tools, for instance. You will always be asked if you're a church member or not. So most of the times, the cases we get are persons who are not members of the church because they come from abroad, and then another part is the insurance. So as I already mentioned, insurance is mandatory over here. You can choose if you want to go for public or private insurance. In most of the cases, people go for public insurance, where you have to pay a percentage of your income for the different insurances, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So the amount you pay always depends on your income and varies. So if you have less income, you will pay less. If you have more income, you will pay more. If you go for a private insurance, you will pay a fixed sum. That's also possible. But as I said, in most of the cases, people go for public insurance because we have big public insurances over here and they work well. We are going to cover this topic with a particular focus on health insurance in a different session. So if that's something you're interested in, you should follow us. And then you will get an update in the upcoming weeks where we will talk about health insurance. Because that's another topic where we have seen a lot of questions in the past. So that's the case we came up with. To get back to the numbers, let's say you earn 4,000 euros a month, and you're single. This means you are part of tax class 1. We have 6 different tax classes in Germany. which depend on your family status. So to determine your tax class, I would suggest you Google tax classes in Germany. You will find a list of the tax classes, and then it's easy to determine which one you are in. Just if you're married, there are some differentiations. Yeah. So in this case, if you're single, it's your tax class 1. This still doesn't tell you what percentage of your income will go into income tax, because this depends on the actual amount you're earning. So it can be anything between 14 to 42%, and it increases gradually depending on your income. So the more you earn, the more income tax you will pay. In this case, and then also you have some tax allowances and so on. So it helps to have a good tax advisor, and then you will pay, or you will probably get a tax refund at the end of the year, depending on your tax declaration. In this case, we have kept the case very simple. If you earn 4,000 euros and you don't go for free tax allowances, you will end up paying 689 euros income tax. Then there's something called SOLI. It's a solidarity tax, which is determined based on your income tax, and it's 5.5% of your income tax. So in this case, it would be almost 40 euros. Church tax depends a bit on which state you live in. That's why we have mentioned a person living in Berlin. It's anything between 8 to 9% of your income tax if you pay church tax. In this case, we have calculated with 0 because not a member of the church. So this would mean the total tax load the employee, or you in this case, is facing amounts up to 727 euros. That's quite a sum, right? But that's not it. There will be more deductions. On top of this, you're facing deductions for insurances. As I said, they are mandatory. So in Germany, you have to pay pension, unemployment insurance, health insurance, and nursing care insurance. And that's something which is mandatory if you're an employee. If you're self-employed, it's a different story. The total percentage of deductions you're facing for those insurances is approximately 20% of your gross salary. So in this case, it would amount up to a bit more than 800 euros. And that's the amount which is being deducted from your salary. So in the end, you would end up with a monthly net salary of almost 2,500 euros. This means that in total, if you calculate tax load and social security contributions, there are almost 40% deductions, and it can be more if you have a higher income. So that's really important to keep in mind when you negotiate salary. Just to make it a bit more transparent for you, because I know there's a lot of confusion about the terms. Or I've seen it when I've been negotiating salary with people from abroad. Here, the monthly net salary and the gross salary you get is different from what your employer pays at the end of the month. So your employer has to pay the other half of social security contributions. So if you are paying approximately 800 euro social security contributions, your employer has to add the other half on top of that. So if you earn a gross salary of 4,000 euros, your employer ends up paying almost 4,800 euros per month. So just to keep that in mind, if you are working for a startup, it's something which will probably be part of the conversation if it's a very small company. If you work for a big company, you will probably never see this total cost for an employer, but just for your understanding, we have included it. Also to make it more transparent, how much in total is being paid for social security contributions. That's quite a high amount. But in the end, it also helps you. So if you stay in Germany for a long time and you pay unemployment insurance and pension and so on, you will also get something out of that if you end up being unemployed. And you will also get a state pension. So that's what you have to contribute to. to get back to the calculation, so the monthly gross salary, the 4,000 euros, is the amount you negotiate when you talk to employers here in Germany. If you go for an interview and they ask you for your salary expectation, something we talked about in our last session, this is the amount you have to think about. And I think that's very important to understand. It's the amount before deductions. So the amount you end up with is much lower. And that's something you have to include in your calculation when you come up with a salary estimate. So the amount you want to ask for when you go for a negotiation with a potential employer. In contrast to that, your monthly net salary is what you end up with on your bank account at the end of the month. So that's also something we get a lot of questions about. So all the taxes and the insurances are being deducted from your salary before your employer transfers the amount to your bank account. So what happens is that your employer transfers income tax and also church tax and everything directly to the tax authority at the end of the month, and then insurance directly to the insurance you're a part of. So that's being taken care of by your employer, and then the amount your employer transfers to you is your net amount. So all the deductions are taken care of and you don't have to worry about it, which I think is pretty comfortable, unless you have a private insurance. In that case, it would probably be different. So as I mentioned earlier, this is only the case if you have a public insurance. Yeah, so very important to understand, everything's deducted before the money comes into your bank account. So as I said earlier, in this case, the deduction is almost 40%, and that's a rough deduction. Yeah, around 40% is what we see quite often. So if you want to have a rough estimate, if you walk into a salary negotiation and you don't have a tool or you don't have the time to do online calculations, always keep in mind, okay, there will be around 40% deducted from my salary, maybe a bit less, maybe even a bit more if you're making a lot of money. So that's I think a good rule to keep in mind. Minimum 40% deduction is what you're going to end up with. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful. As I said, there are a lot of tools online. So also if you Google it, gross salary calculator in Germany, I think you will find a lot of tools. You just have to know the tax class you are in, and that's something you can easily find out online. And then you will have to mention whether you have a public insurance and so on. But then the calculator will do the rest, and I think it will give you a good idea of the money you end up with at the end of the month. You can also try to calculate it yourself, but that's something I would not advise you to do. Those online tools are very, very helpful. And although we also have people on our payroll, and although I've done a lot of negotiations, I would definitely not do this calculation myself. So I'm also using online tools for that. Yeah, so that was it from my side. I hope I was able to answer some of your questions. As I already mentioned, coming up soon, we are talking about health insurance in Germany, also the difference between public and private insurance, which is very important because I know that you already need insurance when you apply for a visa in Germany. So that's something we will cover soon. As I already mentioned, if you have questions, also feedback for us, if you know good tools, if there's something you don't understand, just leave us a comment on any of our social media channels, and we will be happy to cover those topics. You can follow us on YouTube. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and of course you can add us on LinkedIn if you want to. You will always find us with the hashtag AskMitra. Thanks.